So I don't have a particular agenda. I think in hindsight, I might have sent a list of questions out that maybe sent an email out asking people to bring a list of questions to us and gone through those, but that's neither here nor there now, right? I think to kind of get the ball started, ball rolling, as typical when you don't really know everyone, we'll spend a minute or two to just, not even that, maybe 30 seconds or a minute to introduce ourselves, the role in our organization and what we're hoping to get out of this conversation. Since I'm maybe the de facto host here, I'll start by just calling out people. We'll start in the order that I have them. So that would mean Catherine is up first.
Hi, I actually go by Katie.
Katie, okay.
I work at Boston University. I've been at BU about 3.5 years. I have a number of responsibilities, but one of them is problem manager for BU.
What are you hoping to get out of this discussion today?
I'm here to contribute and learn how other people implement problem management. We do it only for P1 incident at BU right now.
Awesome. And of course, tell one of my favorite people in the whole world, Hillary, I said hi.
Yeah, I will.
All right. Next, the infamous or famous, depending on your perspective, Bob Griffin.
That's probably more infamous. Thanks, Mitch. Hey, so I worked for 9+ years and instituted a lot of their ITSM processes, including problem management, and then have moved on to other parts of the world and took on problem management as part of the role at even in the energy sector position. But now currently today, I'm actually a business process consultant for one of the platforms that some of you may or may not use. So with that being said, I enjoy getting in part of these conversations. Thanks, Mitch, for inviting me, because I still do have a lot of connections with EDUs across the globe, actually. And on top of that, I like to see what others are doing, along with understanding the trends that are moving forward and or backwards, for that matter, when it comes to problem management or any of the processes for ITSM. So thanks, Mitch, for inviting me. And Katie, yeah, definitely tell Hillary I said hi. She's a hoot. Every once in a while we text back and forth, so I haven't talked to her in a while. But thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad that you're bringing kind of the industry experience plus your experience you've gotten working at ServiceNow, right? So I'm sorry, I said the platform name. Strike that from the record. So yes. Not to say it. You did not. That's true. You did not say that. I said that. So open mouth, insert foot. Anyway, this is not a ServiceNow call, and Bob's not going to be trying to get new customers. So.
Nope, not a salesperson. I'm just a process guy.
There you go. All right. Next, I have Marion.
Hi. So I'm Muriel Miller. I'm a process manager at the Service Management Office at Princeton University. Want to give a shout out to Katie and Bob Griffin, because they both contributed when I was developing our problem management process a few years back, and it was very helpful. So I appreciate you guys.
I think that was all Katie. That had nothing to do with
me. You were helpful too.
What are you hoping to get out of today's session?
We've been working with it for a couple of years. Kind of like Katie, I think we're pretty successful with priority 1 major incident, but anything less than that, we're kind of, I have to beg people to open problem records and things like that. So I guess adoption, I guess, is my biggest issue that I'd like to hear other people.
Sorry, I have a dog who's barking. I think next, Christina.
Hello, I'm Christina Foster. I am from George Washington University. I've only been with George Washington a little over a year. Before that, I was at the University of Oklahoma. Both places I've done, been that incident manager for the P1 problems, And we at George Washington, we're looking at changing tools hopefully within the next year. And so we'll be redesigning part of our processes. And so kind of looking to see what other people are doing as we look at redesign.
Thanks for joining us. Next, I have Lucas.
Lucas Friedrichsen, ITSM product manager at Oregon State University. Sorry, I missed the blurb earlier. I was having technical challenges. I'm interested in learning as much as possible about problem management. Similar to Marion, we have okay problem management when it comes to major incidents, but beyond that, we're very immature in the space.
Welcome, Lucas. He's a good friend of ITSM, the user group, or community group. So glad to have you here, Lucas. Next I have, is it Gino? How would you say that?
It would be Gino.
Gino, okay.
It looks very much like Gino, but it's Gino. Yeah,
Italian, right?
very much so.
Yeah.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I am Gino Bonetti, and I am from UC San Diego. And there I operate 3 processes: the change, the major incident process, as well as problem management. And they're all very much tied together. They go together. So while it seems like maybe there's 3 different things, I think they go well together. Problem management wasn't always here. We've taken a Lean Six Sigma approach to it. It's about process improvement, but like others who've said they have adoption issues, we have a decent process. We do it with major incidents as primarily is where we have the most success, but adoption for general problem resolution is really what I'm interested in hearing others, what they've done to increase that, and also to get ideas about how to improve our process, because every process can be improved.
Thank you for that. And by the way, I'm going to make a little plug. I always am inspired by, especially by Process Palooza. Mojgan, the process improvement team, I think are doing excellent things. So if you're ever interested in reaching out to those colleagues, my recommendation would be check out the Process Palooza, check out some of what they're doing. They have a great service catalog. So just a shout out to what you're doing there at San Diego. Yep,
I've been involved with Process Palooza each year. It's been out there, and it's been an excellent thing every time, and it keeps getting better.
But process improvement, right?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Then we have Mike.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Otten. I'm the Director of Service Center Operations at Northeast Community College. We're a small school in the Northeast section of Nebraska. So come at this a little different than the rest of you. Since we're small, we know everybody that deals with all of our problems, and we've been using ITSM for a few years. However, what typically happens at small schools is you have a consultant come in, teach you just the basics, and then you run out of money, so you don't ever get to improve, and you have somebody that picks it up and runs with it, and they may not be doing things by the book. Then you morph into kind of what is the now accepted way of doing things. And then when you get put into a new role, like I have recently done, you realize that you're not following things the way you should be. So I'm here to learn from more veteran people that have done incident, problem, change, any of that a lot more, and are likely a lot more successful at it, because we're still in a tribal knowledge type culture. We hate to document, we hate to write things down. We'd rather just pick up the phone or run down the hallway and talk to the person we need, and then when things happen, we firefight and never go back to actually trying to improve things. So while we've been using ITSM and some of the tools for 5 years or so, we're still very in our infancy in our understanding.
Appreciate the mic, and I think just having been involved with the community for so long, having a community college perspective that we can share, I think is going to be very valuable. So I'm glad you're bringing that perspective into this, holistic conversation. So, all right. Last but not least, I saved Galina. She is the problem manager here at USC. So I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure being here with you guys and being able to get different perspectives. As Mitch stated, I'm the incident and problem process manager. I've been doing incident management mainly for like the past 7 years. I've been also doing some problem management. And what I'm hoping to get out of this is, the different perspectives of problem management, because we're still fairly new to the game as well with implementing it and implementing it into the tool. Right now, everything is very manual. And the knowledge, as Mike stated with his organization, is very tribal. So we're trying to get us all to shift, into putting all the information that we know into one section and one tool and being more proactive than reactive.
Appreciate that. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to open it up to the floor, but I wanted to kind of bring us back to why I reached out to the community group to begin with, and then that's pretty much. I'll leave it to you guys to share information, maybe about starting. What your outcomes you were trying to achieve. The path that you started down, implementing problem. Who did you engage? How did you handle OCM? Where are you now, and where you want to go? So maybe those 5 or 6 things that I just rattled off. But at USC, we are taking, and again, Gaming is going to run with this, but I just want to set the stage. So USC, we have a paper process where we ask people to fill out a major incident report after every P1 and sometimes P2, depending on the service that was affected and the stakeholders that were getting involved. But really the goal for us right now, the outcome is to reduce the number of major incidents or incidents at all associated with our services. So it's really looking at, we don't have the problem record implemented at all. So we're not using the tool whatsoever for problem management as far as a problem record. So implementing a basic problem management in ServiceNow, forklifting, if you will, our major incident report form into some sort of, into the record itself, and using that to manage the life cycle of a problem. I think really what we were looking at is, how do we do this in sort of a fresh way? Not your typical, well, here are the 7 steps for problem management, but what's going to provide the best outcome in the fewest steps in sort of a lean, agile, incremental approach where it's not going to be overwhelming for our staff to do the same thing, but in a different way, meaning doing the same thing, but in the tool. So we're trying to look at it from a really fresh perspective in a sort of a lean, agile way. So with that, I'll just throw it over to Galina if you want to kind of color commentate that, or just open up to the floor, and whoever wants to start first, go ahead and start first.
So like you said, pretty much everything is being done in a paper process, and like even now while in the meeting with you guys, I'm following up on some problem management type of thing. So what we do now is, like, when a major incident occurs, after that incident, we have the technicians fill out an MIR document, which is a major incident review document. Basically, all the steps that you would do in the tool, it's just on paper. But at the moment, that's a bit of a struggle for us because, as Marion said, it's hard to get the feedback from people. You're probing, you're saying, hey, what's the update with this? What do we have here? Where are we at now? So that's one of our main issues. And Marion, I guess, I hate to put you on the spot, but like when you run into those types of issues, I guess, how do you address them? Because for me personally, like what I initially do is I reach out to the technician first. If I don't get a response from the technician, I'll reach out again and I'll copy their manager. And then if I don't get a response after that, then I copy the manager and the director. And then it's like a lot of times, a lot of times we don't really get a response until the director gets pulled in. But it's like they're doing a ton of things, and like I don't want to, continue to bug them all the time if there's something that can be avoided,
Right.
What we've done, again, for just priority one stuff is we finally got senior staff approval at that level to mandate that when there's a major incident, there is automatically created a problem record. And I have 1 week after the major incident to get everybody together in a room and lock the door and not let them leave until we get all the data together. And we also, the major incident process owner and I have to present on major incidents every month at our senior staff meeting. So what that does is it gives it a lot of visibility. So when I reach out to somebody, I say, hey, I've got to present to senior staff this next week. Either you tell me what happened or I have to make up stuff, you know? So at the major incident level, that seems to be working very well for us. Anything below that, I'm people ignore me.
Gotcha.
They see me coming, they run the other direction, when we're in the office, that is. Oh, no.
I have, I don't know if you mind if I chime in here.
No, absolutely. Let's go.
Mary Ann said, so the way we do it at BU is, I was hired as a problem manager. And so for any P1 major incident, we have incident coordinators, they're on call and they're the folks that sort of get everybody on the bridge call and restore service. At the end of the incident, when service has been restored, they open a problem. And then I take the problem and I set up a meeting with all the people that were involved. And it's basically a major incident review, but we call it an after action review. And we do it in the problem rather than the incident. That way the incident people don't have to worry about keeping their incident open for a long time. And so, I have a standard, it's called an executive summary the goal of the meeting is to find out what happened, how did we fix it, how can we prevent it, what were aggravating factors, who owns the problem, meaning what service caused this. But the way we get accountability is that our CIO, Tracy Schroeder, loves ITIL and likes this stuff. And I send her a summary, her and all of her directs, a summary after every P1 explaining what happened. And because everybody knows that she's going to get this report, and sometimes she comments on them, sometimes she doesn't, that's the accountability. They know
that's a great idea.
Yeah, and also I'm seen as neutral because I don't own any services and I'm not an incident manager. The problem with that approach is it's not very scalable. And, I can see the downside is that, if you can make this or ask the service owners and service component managers to manage the problem within their space, you might be able to open more problems. But the way BU works, I think they would be overwhelmed. They already have so much work. So that's how we do it here. It's not perfect. I will do what we call an AAR or a problem for any service owner who asks. And I have had people come to me and say, this isn't a P1, but I need help, and I'll help them. So I just wanted to explain to you, that's how we're doing it. It has its pros and cons, but I know that we just have a huge backlog of problems if we just open them for everything.
Yeah, no, that's actually great. Like, it's great, like, especially with giving the summary and the visibility for the higher ups, like that's great. Definitely jotting that down.
Yeah, and we do have, when we have follow-up action items, I assign people problem tasks. And unfortunately, I have to chase people on that. The way it's supposed to work is once we figure out, we give it to the service owner who caused the incident. So
right.
And then they're supposed to follow up on the tasks. They usually don't. And when I first started, I had time to do that. Now I don't. So that's another challenge, is getting people to follow up on their tasks.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. No, I totally agree.
Helpful.
I find that I fill out a lot of problem records for people.
Yeah.
I do the paperwork because that's the only way it's going to get done. And I'll chase somebody down and say, I think you've got a problem. You want me to document it for you? And get that record in there. You're right. It's not sustainable because I've got other things to do as well, but
it's not scalable. So I can keep doing it for P1s, but if we did it for everything, we'd have to hire somebody else.
Right.
And it takes a certain skill to have a bunch of different service owners together and not make people feel like they're being blamed.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
That's a biggie too.
I
That's
was
a
gonna
biggie.
say, yeah.
Yeah.
And relationship building is huge in that arena, and being that neutral party and that neutral voice. If
Yeah.
people feel comfortable in that meeting, that you're not going to put their name on blast to everybody and said, this is the person that broke the service,
Right.
then they're much
Yeah.
more likely to be open about what actually happened.
Right.
And
yeah,
trying to keep those meetings as small as possible is usually a
Yes.
huge thing as well. I know every director and everybody that was affected wants to be in the room, but that just stops the conversation and makes it harder to get to what happened.
Yes, yeah, you're right. And I don't want to dominate the conversation, but the only other thing, and now I'm forgetting, there was something I wanted to say.
This is
I
great.
can't remember anymore, but it was something about the meetings. Oh, I send the summary to everybody who was in the meeting, and I give them the opportunity to provide input before I send it to senior management and their
That's
directors.
good.
That
That's
seems
good.
some people ignore it, but there's a couple of service owners who really read it, and they usually provide constructive feedback. So I just
It
want,
gives
that's
them
the only other thing.
Yeah, it gives them that control of,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not misrepresenting what you said
Right.
to me. You got to see what I say before I send it. And so,
Right. And I give them, and nobody ever says that didn't happen. It's usually things like, oh, you didn't really word this right or something like that. So
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's cool.
It's interesting because we do quite a bit of a blend of the different things I'm hearing. I as the problem manager, I do a incident review with the service owner and maybe the resolver involved in the incident within a day or two of the incident, and it's just those two. And the purpose of that meeting, of course, is to just clean up the major incident record, make sure that it actually represents what took place during the time, because it comes in one way and one service was impacted, but it ends up being more. So part of it is just solidifying that record, but also to make a decision whether we need a problem management record. So if there is further discussion needed, if there's research that needs to be done, if there's additional action items, well, that's a clear sign that we need a problem record. If there's a process issue or anything that needs further action, then we generate a problem record and they go from there. But primarily we clean up the record. So that's just for P1s. But we also have, we have layers. We have what you called an after action report. We have a process for an after action review or report, but it is for the really, really nasty ones, the ones that were really huge and impactful and so undesirable that they just need to have people brought together. And it's managed as a project. So we have the documents that need to be generated. That generation of those documents is done as a project but we use the problem record as well. So that's for really, really nasty ones. The real issue is that we have adoption issues with is service owners who need to improve their service and just initiating their own record just for their own purposes. What we want to do is make life better. As a service owner, you just want things to be better. And they typically go about doing that work without any sort of record or guidance or direction, and they just do it. And some things that's okay, but are you doing the right thing? Are you bringing the right people together? So there's where we really have issues, is people initiating those, because the problem is not just P1, right? It's basically everything is viewed as a process improvement opportunity, if you will, no matter what level of outage or what incident or no matter what. And so in the lower end, when people engage and they say, we're going to do this, they don't document it in a problem record, which is what,
Right.
to me, that's what a problem is. It's not just P1s, it's anything you do. So getting
Right.
people to use problem record to just cover their work in an enterprise environment, you got to be working in some sort of ticket, and it's not an incident, and it's not a request. It's the only other way is a problem record. So that's the challenge we have, is getting that to really get a life of its own, if you will.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Documentation is huge, and I'm probably pretty unpopular at this, but we kind of customized our problem form from the platform because I didn't feel there was enough prompts or whatever on the form. In other words, I have a spot on my form for somebody to put a timeline in. I have a spot on my form for them to list impacted users and like all the things that you normally step through when you're solving a problem, but you have it in your head and you don't write it down. So then 2 weeks later, who did this, who did that kind of thing. And, so when I give my problem record to somebody to fill out, they go, oh, do I have to fill out the whole thing? But it's a thought process that you want them to go through and document. And so, I have that challenge with, with our problem system, and that the record that I think they need, the things that I think they need to record, they look at the form and they go, oh, but as Gino said, if you don't document stuff, you're not. And I find when people have to write things down, they're much more thoughtful and critical with their thinking.
Yeah.
The most amazing part about the whole process in general is the ones who are really good at it and have learned some lessons about how to capture information and timeline information, they do it automatically. They just, the unfortunate part about us, they have lots of incidents. They have lots of time, so they have plenty of opportunity to practice. So they know what's coming and they know what they need to do. So they capture a lot of information up front out of self-preservation. They don't want to worry about it later. They do it right during the incident. That's what the incident manager does. But those are the ones who, they have a lot of them, a lot.
And they get the most benefits from the process too, because in the end, they can see the benefit of doing that. And I think that's, everybody keeps saying, wow, we have to find a way to sell the benefits of the process to people so that we'd get more involved, but haven't found that way yet.
Me neither. That's the tough part.
It helps to have senior management on board. And so like I think having Tracy, our CIO, so involved helps. If we didn't have a CIO interested in reading reports and expecting them, I think it'd be a lot harder.
So how did you get the buy-in from the higher ups? Because I know like we're trying at the moment, because it's not in the tool, like I'm doing a lot of things manually and it's just me on both like the problem and incident side. So it's like trying to provide the value, we can come up with as much data as we possibly can from the actual incident, but proving the value of the problem process is kind of hard because there's no way for us to give those numbers based on the manual process that we do now. So I guess, how did you guys get that buy-in for that?
So part of it is that Tracy is like, she likes ITSM. It's a hobby for her. So she brought it to BU. So I didn't have to convince her. They started problem management before I came to BU, but they had somebody doing it on top of his other job, which was managing network operations.
Oh, wow.
And he couldn't keep up. So when I came, it was a backlog of 200 problems. But to answer your question, I didn't really have to convince her. But one thing I would do is if you can show that the lack of problem management is causing repeat P1s, those are powerful numbers.
Okay.
So for example, like if because at BU, the pressure is always restore service, restore service. And so for example, maybe somebody has to keep rebooting the DNS server. Well, after 6 times of doing that, and we still don't know why the DNS server gets stuck, you need to have a problem. And if you had it sooner and tried to figure out why do we have to reboot it, you might have not had 5 incidents. I don't know if I'm being articulate or not.
Oh, no, yeah, that's great.
I also think it's really difficult to do both incident and problem management with one person. And I think it's recommended that those roles be separated.
Yeah, let's not get started with that, but
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
We have it separated at BU, and part of that is Hillary. We also had Hillary. So I don't know if you know her, but she is incredible. And she fought very hard for that to be separate. And actually our incident manager, Jill Beckman, also thought it needed to be separate. So that helped too.
Yeah.
We have Vince Killen, and he brought a whole bunch of Lean Six Sigma expertise and a whole lot of problem management experience. Well, he's he's a great CIO across the board, but we didn't have to convince either. He mandated and gave, these things were in process before he got here, but once he got here, they were able to take root solidly. And so Galina, I hope I'm saying it right.
Yes, that's right.
We do exactly the opposite of what you do. We start at the higher level, at the director level, and we ask who should be involved, and we go down, and that works so much better than trying to go up.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we start with the upper level at the director level and the service owner level, and say, here's the problem report, and who do you want to be involved? So we go exactly the opposite. We find that people who get direction from their management are much more inclined to participate rather than, here's Gino knocking on my door.
Yeah.
I think I can ignore him a little while longer,
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, no, I know that world because I remember trying to do that, and it's very, very difficult. So with management support, if you've got the management level support, senior management level, that if you start at the top and you go down, things just fall into place so much easier.
And we have visibility on it by having a weekly meeting. So every Wednesday, and I've made the meeting, they used to be 45 minutes. Since I've taken them over, they're closer to 15, but we just go over every problem that is open, and including if you haven't done your after action reports, or if you haven't given us all the details to close it, we talk about them every week and ask for updates. We also, I'm the change manager as well, so we go over changes in that meeting really quick as well. But that's how you get really quick accountability. People don't like seeing their changes on there after they've been resolved or their problems. So
gotcha.
Can't close them until the paperwork's done. So and everybody sees it because it's all directors are invited, CIO, AVPs, as well as some managers. Very public meeting. So people tend to want to get those things closed. And it's helpful because everybody talks through it really quick and everybody gets to ask some questions. It's not a finger pointing meeting, but it's like, hey, what happened here? And people have a chance to say, oh, okay, now we understand. And everybody gets to hear it at the same time.
Okay, that's not a bad idea.
Excellent.
I'm trying to think of any, if you guys have any questions regarding like, your process and things like that, by all means, please feel free to do that. I'm trying to think of anything else. Mitch, is there anything else that you can think of off the top of your head? I think mine is like, I know a lot of, because of our process is pretty much manual. A lot of it, you know, a lot of our issues can be like resolved by just switching over to the tool, which we're in the process of doing at the moment. Again, I just wanted to know how you get the buy-in from, you know, the other groups to be supportive of implementing. Oh, wait, that's a question I have for you guys. I guess, have any of you had any experience implementing the problem process into your organization? Because right now we're still fairly new to implementing the process as well. But I guess I'm interested in you guys' story if you guys have experience in that realm.
Yeah, I did. We started with change because that was the thing that seemed to be more out of control than anything and lacking, and the most immature process. And so we worked change into a stable condition. And what I find interesting is that just because of change, incidents went down because it requires people to plan and say what their plan is and describe what they're going to do. And just that act makes things better. They're less likely to cause problems when they have a plan that they're going to follow, and when they have a back out plan that they can follow. So change just by itself brought incidents down, but incidents and major incidents in particular was next, and that is where problem came in. So once we started to mature the major incident process, we started making use of the problem management process. Those two things came together, and then we generalized the problem management process, not to be just specifically for major incidents. And we're still evolving. We're not done in any way. No, we still have a long way to go. But that's the evolution. Was change was first, then major incident, and because of major incident, problem was the natural process to go with it.
So Gino, I have a question. So change management, we have a pretty well-established change management process as well. And we all know, you know, changes are going to reduce major incidents and they're going to reduce, you know, problems, that sort of thing. But it's interesting when someone executes a change, we ask them, you know, was your change successful? And you know, there's fields on our change form, you know, if they cause something or whatever. And the mindset is, as soon as that change is done, well, of course it was successful. I finished it, and they close it out. And then maybe the next day, you know, the ripple effect happens. Oh, that wasn't my change. My change was successful, but what they changed caused an incident, which may cause a major incident. So it's really hard to get people to make that leap and understand that their change does have other impacts, you know?
Yes, it is. And this is where we still need to improve as well. But because for us, we have incident managers that are primarily the service owners, because they know their space and they can manage things, manage incidents better because they know more. But if we had a specific set of incident managers, maybe just a couple, those could be trained to tie them to change, and then we could get a better communications between those, because change and incident and problem, they do work together. But when we have so many service owners involved, it's difficult to train them all to make that correlation. And I don't see everything. I won't see every time a change caused problem. You know, if they could have extended the window and not told anybody, that sort of thing, that's an incident. But yes, in the end, it was successful. And that's what their goal is.
Let's see, Lucas has his
You
hand
still
up.
can improve there. Oops, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was going to wait until everybody was done. Mitch, thanks for noticing that. Related to the people saying, you know, the impacts of change have on other services, what do you guys do about service asset configuration management? Seem to be one thing that we're grappling with is wanting information like that, and just like, how do we maintain it? How do we, at what level of detail makes sense?
I will say we don't do that well at OU or at GW. It's something that it was something always that next step we were going to do of how do we make sure we're tracking those dependencies. But it wasn't something that I have ever gotten to in that way.
Yeah, we're working on areas of improvement. As far as we go at USC, Mitch could probably provide a little bit more feedback, but yeah, that's a struggle for us as well.
I think that's kind of
Us as well.
yeah, I was just, you know, the idea of so some organizations, I think when they use a particular ITSM tool, right, that which shall not be named, you know, sometimes the use of the tool becomes a barrier to adoption because of some misconceptions or this perception that it's hard to use, and that, you know, there's going to be less likely for people to follow even a current state process if we put in a tool, because the tool might be the barrier to continuing to adopt. So, you know, I hear from your group, from this group, you know, focusing on P1s. I'm also hearing problems related to failed changes, right? Because we're looking at scope, like how do we, you know, back to that lean and agile approach, how do we, where did you start? What would you suggest for somebody maybe wanting to improve this? What process integrations would you include first? And then second part to that question is, if you've got an established process or practice that people are following, and you've got the leadership buy-in, right? That's a big component that I think is clear in this conversation, is strong leadership support. What has been your approach to incrementally improving this, getting that co-development of improvement with your, you know, users of problem?
I will say at GW, the process was already in place, but at OU, my process followed a lot of what Gino's did. I own change. I was seeing problems. I also sat within the service desk. So I cared about outages. And so I slowly started taking over the problem process because the two were linked. We saw them linked so often. So I started being that incident manager for all incidents. And so we created that hub of knowledge. And then I started training people to do those things. And people, since we did change, people were talking to us. So the problem side came really quickly, and we were able to build those relationships. So people trusted us because they would go, hey, we need to fix this. We don't know who to work with on this team. And we could be that connection point. And so I started doing also the operational communication. So now that you had to talk to me on both sides, and I do all of those at GW as well. And so it makes those interactions a lot easier because they have to talk to us in one of those three stops so we can tie the whole conversation together. Within the tool, having it there is helpful. We're still looking at what is that next step. And so how do we make this easier for people? Because that's the biggest thing we have. Our problem form is huge. It's probably got 3 different pages and a ton of different fields on all those pages. And so how do we make it easier for people?
Absolutely,
That's our biggest barrier.
Yeah, in that paragraph or, you know, monologue, that's really the heart of it, is how do we make this easy for people and then slowly improve upon feedback. Yeah, what are the top 5 fields, right? So I might have shared with some of you, you know, we have our MIR form, and then we're looking at what mappings do we create? Do we create a field that has sort of a template that includes what was in our current MIR form, or, you know, whatever you're calling your RCA form, or do we create a form that has all those fields independently? You know, how much guide do we give people versus how much free flow text do we allow? And what is the most valuable thing, right? Lucas said, what are the top 5 fields in any form? What's providing the most value, what's non-value added, right? And what's non-value added but necessary, right? To kind of going back to a Six Sigma or Lean philosophy.
And it's making sure the questions you're asking that they're actually answering. So if you have those fields that are open, even, dedicated fields, are they answering the questions that you're actually wanting to know? And that's what we saw with ours. Yes, all the questions make sense, but that's not the answers we're getting. So then it's not useful information. So why are we even asking it? Is kind of where we're coming from.
For us, the key was not just asking the questions, because you can script those and you can say, you can use the same ones over and over, which is really nice. It's about the actions that are required afterwards and tracking those actions. That is where, to me, that's where the value is gained the most. What is the network team going to do? What is the server team going to do? What is the application team going to do? Are they going to develop? Are they going to change something? So it's the actions and defining those actions that we found were the most important part. The discussion is what leads to the actions. So that was the purpose. Generate actions.
I loved how someone mentioned earlier, what are the metrics that we're using, right? Not just like, well, we've reduced the number of incidents because we've fixed the root cause, but how much productivity has been gained because of the, those incidents not reoccurring. What is the experience of our users for that application now that it's more reliable, right? Those kind of experience levels and key metrics, right? So what are 3 or 4 key things we want to report on? Because if you don't have leadership support, if you don't have the IT staff buy-in, like, why are we doing all of this work? Unless you can go back to them and say, we've had these number of incidents, but because we've implemented the problem process, we've seen a reduction in incidents by this count, and we've gained this time back, and people are reporting a better satisfaction. Or if you're, tying financial information to that service, well, we've saved this amount of money because, we don't have this downtime. Going back, it's kind of like, wow, the FOMO, right? The applications group is involved in problem analysis and root cause analysis and or incident reduction, and they're getting time back. Well, what do we need to do to be able to get some of that, right?
I don't know what other people's experience are in this area, but we categorize each one of them as the root cause. Was it application? Was it network? Was it third party? We categorized it at the end, and we do metrics on that one thing. And the one that is the biggest and has been the biggest forever is human error. That's the one that generates the most. That's the root cause of so many major incidents across the board. I didn't know that it was going to do that, or I saw something and I fixed it. I didn't know it was going to cause that problem. I copied and pasted, but I left off the last character of the paste, and when I dropped it in, the network went down. That kind of thing. It's these are things that how do you prevent human error? How do you reduce human error? To us, that's the thing that plagues us, because people, when processes are followed, they seem to work and they seem to help. But human error, how do you avoid that? How do you stop that? You can't.
So, yeah, actually, I have a contrary or controversial kind of statement for that. Somebody much smarter than I said, most of the time human error is caused by a failure in the process. So if you really are shoring up your process, you can be more likely to eliminate human error. And the other side of that is, that human error discussion as being the root cause. When you get into a group, a room full of people, and you're pointing out that you made this mistake, that's challenging from a adoption perspective, because no one's going to want to admit, and not saying anyone's doing this, but just human nature, right? If you're in a room full of people and you say, Joe caused this problem because he fat fingered it, you're going to be less likely to get an honest, less likely to have a psychologically safe environment for people to express, their feelings and what they did to, what caused the issue, focusing around data and facts and, non-judgmental. So with that, how do people handle those conversations to encourage a freedom of expression and, a safe environment?
First of all, you never say Joe did it. You never say that this person was the cause. You say that the team did such and such. You never point to an individual, because that is exactly what you're saying is exactly right. It will hamper adoption. But as long as you're not pointing to anybody, you're just saying this team had difficulty, and when this was implemented, there was an error. Now everybody's going to know who that was, but as long as you're not pointing to somebody and just pointing to a team or an area, it's really much easier to gain or to engage in those discussions. And it does take a special skill for those who are moderating or facilitating those meetings to make sure and not point fingers. It's a skill. It's a skill, because it's very easy to offend people, but you can capture the information and you can avoid finger pointing and still be very, very clear about what happened.
And a lot of times, we will have this where they did a change request and they forgot one step. And we'll again, we won't say the person, we'll say the network team when implementing this change failed to execute following step or something like that. Usually then we'll say, do we need to update the SOP for that type of change? And a lot of times if they make the mistake, sometimes it is a process failure, like somebody else said, and just try to cloak things in terms of we're trying to continuously improve things. Everybody makes mistakes. How can we help avoid mistakes by tightening up the process?
And Katie, you actually illustrated the example I made about that. A lot of times we think it's a human error, but it's more about a process failing. And many of us in organizations, we have something called a peer review during the change process. So the peer review process wasn't necessarily followed, right, as the way it was intended, right, to catch those, second pair of eyes, right? So.
Exactly. Yeah. And we bring that up. Like I'll bring the change manager in who will say, did you test this? And they'll say, yeah. We might say, oh, okay, we got to change how we test this, that sort of thing.
That's good.
Well, Galen, I know there's one other question. I don't know if we have time for it. I don't know if we touched on it. I was kind of helping Lucas with some of the notes here. I'm gonna, he's been doing a wonderful job. If you jumped on the Google Doc he created, I'll send this out as an artifact for the meeting, as well as a recording. But the question I think we have, Galen, if I'm right, is oh man, I escaped. What do you carry over from the incident record, right? We've been debating about how much information do we put into the problem record from the associated incidents? Have anyone tackling that at all?
We are at BU. What we do is I think we're using out of box. We have ServiceNow where you can create a problem from an incident, and that'll carry over like the resolution field, the child incidents, that sort of thing. But we don't care. We try not to do too much. We just try to take what would just be extra typing in the problem.
Okay.
So, I mean, I go back to the incident to read the notes if I need more information beyond the. And sometimes the resolution note is we resolved it, and okay, well that's not very helpful. That's why we have to have a problem. How did you resolve it?
Right.
Yeah. It might take a couple clicks to go back to the associated record, but it's all connected in your ITSM tool. So I know we're at the 3 minutes till. Anybody have a final thought that if key takeaway that our listeners or even people here just want to let them know?
Keep working at it.
I'd say if you're
That's
going
really where
to
you're going.
start, oops.
gonna say, it comes together slowly and you'll see incremental changes, but it's just a daily making everything better just a little bit at a time.
And keep it simple. These things get complicated fast enough on their own. So start as simply as you can with as little as you can and go in the direction that the organization needs you to go.
Guiding principles, right? ITIL 4 guiding principles.
That's right. Keep it simple.
All right, well, I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for getting together on a Monday morning or maybe afternoon now, depending on where you're at. I'll send out the recording. I'll send out the notes. We didn't have time to discuss any follow-up, but I think I'll email this group here and see if there's any opportunity for a follow-up webinar event if any of you are interested. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. This was a great talk. I loved it.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your passion and involvement in the community. All of you is what makes the community so great. So
Have a good week, everybody.
all right, bye all.
Bye, guys.